Hello everybody, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening depending on where you are in this amazing world. My name is Donovan Jolly, and welcome everybody once again for another amazing video of DIY investing. The market structure that is playing out is something that is so identical to what we saw in 2016, right before the whole market did over 1000x. Many people are going to miss out on this opportunity in the exact same way that they missed out on that mega 2017 alt season, and we're going to break down how to go about making the most profit on it, and then I'm going to be giving you guys 3 of my favorite altcoins that I feel really confident are going to explode in value. If you're new and just find this channel, always remember to do me a favor by leaving a like, comment, and subscribing. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these amazing videos like the one provided for you here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and with that being said, let's jump right into it today. Alrighty guys, so to start off this video, I want to get right into what is the most important to help everybody understand where we're at and what is going to be coming for us, everybody that is well positioned inside of the market. Now everybody has been kind of questioning, including myself for a long time, why wasn't our last cycle quite as parabolic as some of the prior ones? Because if we're comparing it to what we saw in 2017, it was very small. We didn't see nearly the same type of price expansion as we did in 2017, and really not even the same as what we had seen in all of the prior cycles. And so many people were kind of questioning that, is there ever going to be that same sort of big expansion in price? Are we past that point forever? And I'm here to break it down so that everybody can understand that there is no difference in the cycles. The only thing that has changed is the amount of time that it takes to get the exact same type of moves. And we're going to go through and explain it. And then I'm going to be breaking down 3 of my favorite altcoins that I think are going to profit the most off of this next coming bounce. We're going to be talking about this very beginning cycle for crypto, because this is what is important. This was our very first breakout into new all-time highs. And this is what led us into that 2017 alt run. This was probably the most profitable cycle that we had ever seen because of the fact the amount of altcoins that just went up over, 500,000x type returns. Everything was really undervalued and we saw the market go up like crazy. Now, I believe the days where we see these same exact type of expansions are not over. I just believe that it's going to take more time to get those same type of returns. Now, what we're going to see here, in the same way that this was the beginning of our impulse, this is the exact same type of move. Our entire last cycle, for that matter, when we rallied up from the bottom of our COVID low, March 13th of 2020, and we rallied all the way up until about summer, June of 2021, we topped out here, we corrected, we rallied back up and technically made a new all-time high, but in my opinion, this isn't an impulse, and this entire structure is corrective. We didn't see, this type of a blow off top. That wasn't what we saw right here. And so I don't believe that this move was actually an impulse. This is an obvious impulse. It's very obvious to tell that that one was an impulse. This was not. This was actually corrective structure because we barely even made it out of previous all-time highs. In fact, the majority of altcoins, Doge, Chainlink, some of these that were really hyped early on, they made their all-time highs in this move. And so we actually saw peak euphoria in about June, right? And so it was similar inside of our first cycle all the way back in 2016. When we rallied up, we made this big blow-off top type of move. And then we rallied up again, and technically we made a new all-time high inside of this cycle, but we pretty much corrected right after and then went right back down to those lows. Even though this one didn't correct quite as hard, this is still the exact same type of example. And if we come into this is the actual chart. So the prior cycle before this little move right here, this first impulse, that is what this looks like. And it's almost the exact same type of market structure that we're seeing today. This part is a little bit more volatile, but it's almost the same thing. The top of the cycle, we start getting our first lower highs and lower lows. Capitulation. Out of capitulation, we make our first higher high. We kind of correct back down. And then this is really where we kind of go through further consolidation for about a year. And then this was the move that we were just barely talking about, that first breakout into new all-time highs, right? And so look at where this move is actually retesting. This bottom of capitulation is basically right on support of those previous all-time highs. And that's what took us into that 2017 alt season. And if we're looking at this exact same type of move today, where are we at today? Well, basically sitting right on those exact same all-time highs after almost the same sort of consolidation here. It's almost the exact same type of move. And that's why I believe the next cycle coming is going to be a lot more like that 2017 alt run where we saw something like this. Now, because of the fact we have more money involved with it, I'm curious to see what the amount of time involved is, how long the cycle is going to actually be. But that's going to be the question, right? Are we going to see this halving event play out as a cycle top indicator? Because keep in mind, guys, the thing that really drives all of our prior bull markets has been this halving, the Bitcoin halvings. Every single time we have a halving, the whole markets just explode, including altcoins. And that's been the way it has always been ever since there's been a Bitcoin halving. Now, what we're seeing today is a little bit different. The way that the cycle is looking, if the market starts rallying right here where we're at and we start breaking out into a new cycle, you know, if we're running into new all-time highs sometime in 2023, at that point, we're already front-running prior cycles. And we would honestly be looking at our halving taking place, you know, sometime spring of 2024. That's when it's projected to be. We would be looking at that halving as being more of a cycle top indicator. Because you guys got to remember here, when we're looking at these big picture cycles, let me pull up a different chart. So when we pull up this all-time graph of Bitcoin, it's really important that we factor in these halvings because something is happening inside of our cycle that could be very different than any of the prior cycles. And I believe that this is ultimately telling us that we are potentially due for a really big rise in price. Something more of a blow off top like what we saw with the internet bubble, right? We all know that we've been waiting for this big adoption cycle. We all know that there's going to be a one cycle that really is different than others where we get a true mainstream top, where mainstream cycle, where mainstream media is really covering it, masses are adopting it, grandparents are asking about it, everybody is in the works, right? Like we saw in the internet bubble. And I honestly believe that our next cycle, this next impulse that we're about to start could easily be that. And I believe that this next halving could actually be a sell the news type of event rather than it being some type of a catalyst for a new bull run. If we're looking at all of our prior halvings, what we saw at the very beginning of each one, we always see the bottom of the cycle happen and the buyers and the smart money are stepping in right before that halving takes place. We see these first two higher highs stepping in here. We get the halving that takes place based off of this dotted line. And then what we see after is the prices immediately skyrocket into price discovery, new all-time highs, right? And that was this cycle here. Now, if we look at 2016, it was the same thing. We saw this sideways accumulation for 280 days. We saw this higher high, and then we saw this higher high. And even though we corrected shortly after this halving, we can see that what happened after is the exact same thing as 2013. The prices immediately went into price discovery onto new all-time highs. Now, if we're looking at what happened in our last halving, it was pretty much the same thing. Maybe our accumulation was a little bit shorter than prior cycles, but overall, we just had one big higher high, and that was kind of the gist of it, right? It was still the same sort of price action that we had seen, and shortly after the halving, we did the same thing as far as going to the upside. The difference was our last cycle had a lot more profit taking, right? There was a lot more profit taking that took place, and that, in my opinion, came when there was a lot more institutional involvement inside of the market. When there's institutional investors, you got to think, guys, that they're playing with a lot bigger amounts of capital. They're fine with taking profits, you know, when they're up 3x into all-time highs. They don't have to be up 10x or anything crazy like we saw in prior bull markets because they are used to the stock market gains, right? They are fine with being greedy with taking profits, and I believe that that ultimately factored into why our last bull run wasn't quite as parabolic as prior cycles. Now, nonetheless, guys, I don't believe that that will always be the case. And if our next cycle that's stacking up is going to be more of that true mainstream adoption cycle, what we're going to see is a little bit different. Because keep in mind, guys, what we're seeing inside of the price chart, if we bottom here and we make a big move up inside of Bitcoin, let's say that we flip this prior high right here at about 2,500. If we flip that high, that's a confirmed double bottom breakout. And it's the same pattern that happened here, right? When we first broke out of this resistance in 2016, and that created this entire reversal. Now, I'm not saying just because we're having a double bottom, it's going to create this exact pattern. I'm just saying that that is what a double bottom is. It's a double bottom reversal pattern. It's a reversal of the entire prior trend. So in this case, we've been in a bear trend. So once we flip this high at 2,500, we're literally just going to be destined for new all-time highs because that's your target, is the prior all-time highs. I don't expect Bitcoin's just not going to break out of those. And so once we can do that, that's really confident confirmation that the new trend is starting. And if we start doing this early, keep in mind, guys, that if we set our first higher high in here and we start uptrending sometime next year and we do something like this, and we're sitting near those all-time highs sometime in 2023, maybe even closer towards the end of 2023, we're already going to be on a little bit of a quicker pace than what we saw in prior halvings. And keep in mind, guys, that what I'm watching for, there has never once been a time where we've seen a Bitcoin halving and we've been above the prior all-time highs of the last cycle. All of our prior halvings that have occurred happened after, a pretty slow and steady consolidation in an uptrend. Even the same thing happened here in our last cycle in 2020, 2021, right? Now, if we start running into new all-time highs, and we're already into new all-time highs, having this big parabolic rally, and we haven't had the halving and we're front-running that, I truly believe that this next Bitcoin halving is going to be a sell the news type of event, right? Where we might rally up to this 250K level or something like that, and then we actually sell off from that entire move. I'm not trying to say exactly, but I would not be surprised, because what we see inside of our Elliott wave count, to me, looks like we're just missing a wave 5. We finished wave 1. Our entire move to 65K was the top of our wave 3. I'm not counting our move to 69,000 as an impulse. That was a corrective wave. And our wave 4 takes us to the prior all-time high and pretty much where we're at right now. I believe that our next cycle will be a wave 5, and that's why I'm saying that we could see this being more of a cycle top, a true adoption cycle like the internet bubble was, is because the wave count shows that this is a big picture wave 5. That is theoretically where you would see a blow off top, is inside of this wave 5, right? And so when we're looking at this, it's important to factor all of these things in. And that's why I believe that based off the way the market structure is looking right now, we could easily front run this halving, and for the first time ever, as every single person inside the world is expecting this same pattern to play out like every single time it has happened, I honestly think that it's less likely to happen. And that's kind of the same thing that happened at our top at 65,000. Everybody, including myself, was expecting this big euphoric blow off top like we had seen in all of our cycles. What did we get? Well, we only got a tiny little move past all-time highs, and it was actually just a corrective wave. It wasn't actually an impulse. And so in the same way that that caught so many people, including myself, off guard, I believe our next cycle top is going to catch a lot of people off guard, and we're going to see something play out a lot more consistent with our next halving being a more of a sell the news type of event. You guys got to think and keep in mind, we're playing a game with institutional investors, and if we're looking at our wave count and this is showing a big picture 5-wave blow off top, it's really important to expect that these institutional investors are going to be greedy when it comes to taking profits. They've been buying since 2018. They accumulated all throughout this period, and you got to think that they're also accumulating right now. They are definitely going to be taking heavy profits. And so I'm really just expecting the same targets that I had in the last cycle. I was expecting 250K in this blow off top like we had seen in prior cycles, although I still believe that that's going to be our targets heading into our next cycle. I'm not expecting anything too much crazier. It is possible that if we get some true mainstream adoption cycle and these institutions get with their mainstream news outlets and really pump their bags heavily, we could see it extend higher. But it's hard to say because it is a wave 5 count. They can be really big, they can also be kind of short, and so all we can really do is just take profits, understand that if we're starting to rally into new all-time highs as we're actually doing this before we've ever even had a halving, that's already changing the script that we've seen in prior cycles. And I believe that if we're into new all-time highs and we haven't had the Bitcoin halving, and then we really start ripping 100K, 150K per Bitcoin, and we're starting to get closer and closer to that Bitcoin halving, you guys got to think that all of the people are going to get so bullish. All of the retail people, all the people that haven't been around for a super long time, even people that have, are going to get really bullish. And they're going to FOMO buy the top, thinking that, oh, this cycle is going to be the exact same. The halvings are always the same. Everybody was wrong thinking the blow off top happened, but the one thing that stayed the same was the halving and the big move that came after. Just keep in mind that I honestly think that this next move could easily be a cycle top indicator. Alrighty guys, let's get into the altcoins. I think I've talked enough about why I believe that we could have a huge cycle and why it could actually be a big mainstream cycle. Now let's talk about the altcoins. First on the list is going to be Atom. Now, the reason why I like this one is simply just kind of the play on narrative with the layer 1s and layer 2s. Those are kind of a bigger focus inside of my portfolio and trading plan. I believe that layer 1s, any sort of competitor towards Ethereum, any sort of competitor towards those cryptos, as well as layer 2s, anything that kind of is solving some of the issues with the gas fees and bridging and helping different ecosystems do things like that. It really helps and connects with DeFi. There's a lot of money that could flood into these projects. And so when it comes to the first one on the list being Atom, I love this and I've been holding it since here. I first accumulated Atom during this sell-off back in June of 2021, right? And so I've been holding ever since. I've just been kind of waiting for it to do its thing. And I don't feel like anything has really changed as far as what I'm seeing. If anything, I feel really confident because it's done really well, it's held up well, and it's impulsed nicely off of our lows. Now, what I see is just your classic example of a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5 impulse. So basically what that means, this entire bear market's just been our ABC correction. This entire impulse is just our first cycle, right? It's just a one wave. And so every single Elliott wave cycle has 3 sets of impulses. So this is our first set, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's just part of a bigger one wave. And what we're going to get ready for next is wave 3, which is the most parabolic and the most impulsive. And so it's really important to remember these things because had you have known that, you could have bought Binance coin early, right before it went up like 30x in the matter of just a few months. And so when we understand these things, it helps us to have a better idea of what is actually taking place on the bigger time frames. And so we're going to change this color to a green so that you guys can differentiate. But basically, this was our first set of Elliott waves, and that was our last cycle. We saw these first sets, and we finished our correction. Now that we're already starting to kind of break out, make higher highs, once we can get back above, well, this is the 50 MA on the weekly time frame. If we could cement a higher high above that, in my opinion, this thing isn't going to take long before we're starting to break out into new all-time highs. Even if it doesn't go that quick, we could rally up here and correct back down and do something like that. It doesn't really change the big picture. There will be a huge impulse that's coming because our next cycle is our big picture wave 3. I've talked to you guys about this many, many times, and this is kind of what I'm talking about. So this was wave 1, just this small little impulse, and this was wave 3. It's our biggest on average. This is where the most volume comes in, the most profit, all of those great things. And so when we're looking at this, we can get an idea of targets based off of Fibonacci. So we'll just draw this from the bottom to the top, back down to the low point of our bear cycle. And this is going to give us our targets. So we would basically be looking at about this 2618 at our minimum target for our next cycle. And that's not even counting a wave 5 impulse that would come. Maybe that takes us, another year of a bear market before we get to that wave 5, but nonetheless, our next cycle is still going to be very parabolic. And when we're looking at this, I honestly think that Binance coin is a good example of a comparison because it was pretty much in that exact same point in its last cycle, right? It could look a little bit different, but nonetheless, it's still just its first wave. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? That was our first impulse. And then this was our wave 3. This massive move, this very parabolic move. And our entire bear market has been Binance Coin's wave 4 correction, right? And so who knows, maybe our next cycle for Atom is going to end up being something like this after we have this expansive move to the upside. And so that's what I'm meaning when I'm talking to you guys about what I see here. All we're doing is mapping out the Elliott wave structure. And once you understand the Elliott wave structure, in my opinion, it gives you guys a great grasp of what can happen in the bigger picture. Because I've bought so many of these altcoins in our last cycle. Phantom was one of those that I bought really early, and it was just because it was creating this exact same type of wave structure. It was just a one wave. Luna was another one. I bought it at 32 cents, even though it crashed to nothing, basically. I made a lot of money on that, and I took profits at about 20 and 40x, the most of it. I left some in there for riding on the long term, but I obviously lost that when the Luna market crashed. But nonetheless, guys, as long as you're taking profits on the way up and keeping that, putting it away, not putting it back into the markets like a lot of people do, you're going to be okay. And Atom is one that shows early wave structure. And if what we're looking at right now continues to kind of play out, from where we're at today, you're looking at about 7x. And when it comes to these markets, when we're looking at Binance coin, if we were to draw these Elliott waves, Binance Coin would have shot way past these, right? It would have just dwarfed this entire market as it would have went up like this. So you guys got to remember that even though our minimum target is the 2618, so much and so often when these markets move, they far surpass these targets. And so I'm just letting you guys know where you would initially want to take some profits on the long term. But when I'm holding these, I'm looking at the long term based off of the time frames more, because they're a lot more accurate and we can sell based off of these time frames, and then we don't have to try and predict an exact price. And so that's what I'm looking at based off of this. Now, the next one on today's list is going to be Metis DAO. Now, Metis or Metis, however you spell it, now, Metis or Metis, however you say it, is one of those really early cryptos that has a similar market cap to some of those better returning altcoins that I held. And it's sitting at about $100 million in market cap. That to me was a sweet spot in the last cycle, anywhere from about 50 to 150 million in market cap. I was able to buy some of those really early, and they were actually my better returning alts. Now, Ethereum's creator, Vitalik Buterin, his mom is actually the lead developer of this project. And so I think that actually is going to be a big reason why this probably ends up doing really well, just because of the hype that can be generated around those sort of narratives in the bull market. And then also, Vitalik actually donated $100 million towards a grant that funded a lot of this project. So obviously that there's going to be a lot of that shared belief between Vitalik. He's going to be able to help him out with the project as more of an advisor. And so I believe that this is going to do really well. When we're looking at it on the big picture, this is just your first cycle. Another example of your first set of impulse waves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the way up. And then our bear market was our A, B, C back down. And we've already finished our first impulse, right? This is already that exact same move. So this was our first impulse that led us into this big expansive move. This is the exact same thing. This is our wave 1 structure, right? And so if we're looking at kind of the same thing to play out, you know, depending on where this goes, this could just be subset of waves, right? We could make wave 3 rally up to the top of wave B, pull back here, and then maybe wave 5 is just taking us to those all-time highs. Or maybe wave 3 gets impulsive and takes us all the way up here. It's hard to say, and I'm not trying to predict those things. The big point to understand is we're at the bottom of a wave 2 correction. At the bottom of our last wave 2 correction was right before this massive bull cycle started. And so who knows what is really going to happen, how long it's going to take, but this is the point where we want to be buying. When we're looking at things on the long term, when we're looking at things on where we want to accumulate it, where's the best spot to accumulate it, this is the best spot to accumulate it, because we just flipped back onto support of the 50-day moving average. This is a huge trend, a momentum indicator, and it's pretty much been inside of a bearish trend our entire last year. And so now that we're on support and holding, I believe that there's going to be a lot of buy support that steps in here. And if we can get back above our prior high, that truly cements a move up to the top of this wave B, and that's going to basically take us to about 170 bucks. So this is one to keep on your radar. Like I said, there's a lot of fundamentals with this. I believe it's going to be one of those really solid ones. Now, this isn't a layer 1. This is actually a layer 2 crypto, and it's going to solve a lot of those issues with Ethereum. Vitalik Buterin's mom is the lead developer. It got a grant of $100 million from Vitalik itself. So all of those reasons, I'm bullish. Let's move on to the last one on today, which is going to be GMX. Now, GMX is a part of Arbitrum. Now, for you guys that don't know what Arbitrum is a layer 2. It solves a lot of the issues with Ethereum. So in the same way, all of the gas fees, all of the bridging issues when it comes to gas, being able to use DeFi stuff, all of this stuff that comes with being able to actually use Ethereum, whereas are the downfalls of Ethereum, right? If you guys were trading on Uniswap or any of these different DeFi protocols during the bull run, you know how expensive it got just to make a simple transaction. And so the average person gets priced out. That's the reason layer 2s exist. It's to solve and basically correct all of those problems with Ethereum. Now, this is one that I believe is going to be huge. This isn't Arbitrum. Keep in mind, the Arbitrum itself is a layer 2. It's a layer 2 over Ethereum. But something to keep a note of is Arbitrum transactions count rises to 62% of all Ethereum transactions. So over 60% of all Ethereum transactions currently existing inside of the blockchain are being done and bridged through Arbitrum. Arbitrum itself doesn't have a token. I believe there could be an airdrop, which is why it's important to kind of play around with their network, play around with their protocol, kind of see if it works, and also just, you know, move some money around, because if they end up having an airdrop, those are going to be the parameters for what you're going to need to basically get excluded for it, and you can make a lot of profit if they release a token. But This is GMX, and this is actually a perpetual futures exchange. It's not just a centralized futures exchange, though. It's a decentralized perpetual futures exchange. Perpetual futures are something that really hasn't existed inside of a decentralized exchange, or the ones that have really don't have any adoption and they kind of suck. There's no liquidity. This is one that I believe is going to be one of the first that actually take off, and it's immediately going to benefit because of all of the volume that is happening inside of the Arbitrum network. Now, this being a DEX and being the main one on there and being the only one on there, this thing is, leaps abound anything that I've ever seen. When it comes to decentralized exchanges, most of them are kind of garbage. There are some good ones out there, but this one is not only a DEX, it's a perpetual futures exchange. So you can go margin trade, use high leverage. I think it goes up to 25x, and that's really cool being it's all on the blockchain. So what we're seeing right here in the early part, this is just our early beginning cycles, right? Wave 1, Wave 3, and then Wave 5. In the same way that we were kind of looking at Atom and Cosmos, ABC back down, right? And then most recently, this move here was kind of the same thing. This is Wave 1, I believe. Oops. This was Wave 1, and what's coming next was Wave 3 and Wave 5. Hard to say how impulsive it gets into this next move. I'm not trying to predict it exactly, but because Wave 1 took us all the way back to the prior all-time highs, and Wave 2 was just this tiny little correction, that tells me there's a lot of buyers going to stepping in here. There's a lot of volume stepping in as well. With how much volume is coming into Arbitrum, I know that this thing is going to directly benefit. And so when we're looking at these things, it's important to understand this stuff. But guys, it's an understanding that there's certain narratives that end up taking off really early and quick inside of bull cycles, and understanding where that money is ultimately going to go. There's early problems that always arise, and with Ethereum, you got to think in mind that there's gas fee issues. There's always slow issues with Ethereum, and there's downtime with Solana. There's always little issues with other blockchains. And so if you have a crypto that is going to be directly seeing immediate value, being Arbitrum, for this example, Arbitrum is already seeing 62% of all volume and transactions on Ethereum being done through the Arbitrum network. If that's happening, where is that money going to go if it's flowing through Arbitrum? Well, it has to go through GMX at some point. This only has $350 million in market cap, so it's still relatively undervalued. It's a little bit more out of some of the most profitable, but I watched many of my altcoins that I held that were within that range still perform exceptionally well, and I know that you guys are going to be super grateful with whatever return you get out of this next cycle. But that's what I wanted to give you guys, was this update. This is one that I know is going to fly. I'm telling you guys that you might doubt a lot of these altcoins, but if you keep them on your list, they're going to perform well. I've researched them. I really feel good in their fundamental belief. GMX is one of those that's a strong fundamental coin. I'm not just sitting here talking about some coin I don't understand. There's an immediate use case for this. There's a ton of volume going through Arbitrum. It's going to see upside because of that. And now Metis, like I stated, Vitalik's mom is the lead dev over there, and so I think it's going to do well. It's also just in its first cycle, so what we're getting ready for is Wave 3. Those are going to be insanely profitable cycles to be holding early on. They were definitely my best returning altcoins if I'm looking back at like Chili's, if I'm looking back at Anchor, if I'm looking back at Phantom, even Solana. A lot of those really good altcoins I bought early and held, they were all in these exact same early type of cycles, and so pay attention for them. Remember guys, Atom, this one's going to be the biggest market cap coin on our list, so the upside potential is going to be definitely less than the other two, but it's still one of those that I have a lot of confidence is going to do well, and this is the safest one on today's list. So if you guys found value in this, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these amazing videos. If you guys want to join the Discord server, download my free ebook. Follow all of my trades, all of my portfolio, what I'm going to be investing in heading into this next cycle, specific price points, specific exit points, where I'm going to be re-entering, and all of that fun stuff. NFT picks, anything I'm doing with my money is going to be taught to you guys inside of the Discord. And so it'd be really cool to see you guys as a part of that. If you guys like the channel and want to support it, just drop a like. Any of this stuff really means a lot to me. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And with that being said, I will catch you in the next one. As always, peace out.